Good evening. Today is January the 25th, 2021. I hope everybody's had a good day. Today is the last day for 2021 of the week of prayer for Christian unity. It's an ecumenical Christian observance in the Christian calendar that's celebrated internationally. And this week is annually coordinated by the World Council of Churches, with participation by its member churches, which include the Assyrian Church of the East, the Oriental Orthodox Churches, the Eastern Orthodox Churches, the Old Catholic Church, the Moravian Church, some branches of the Lutheran Church, the Anglican Communion, the Mennonites, the Methodist churches, Reformed churches, as well as some Baptist and even a few Pentecostals. The Roman Catholic Church is not a member of the World Council of Churches, but has observer status and also celebrates the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity. This event began in 1908 as the Octave of Christian Unity. It focused on prayer for Christian unity. An octave is a period of 8 days, so it's celebrated between January 18th and January 25th. The Faith and Order Conference by 1941 changed the date for observing the week to be observed by Catholics, and in 1948, with the founding of the World Council of Churches, the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity became increasingly recognized uh, by different people throughout the world. In 1958, there was a French Catholic group that became involved, and the year 1968 saw the first official use of materials prepared jointly by the Faith and Order Commission of the World Council of Churches and the Pontifical Council for Promoting um, Christian Unity of the Roman Catholic Church. Collaboration and cooperation between these two organizations has increased steadily since, resulting recently in joint publications in the same format. You know, it's often quoted, the prayer of Jesus, that he said he desired that his disciples might be one. Even as he is one with God the Father. But it's interesting to note that the very same night that Jesus prayed that prayer, the disciples were bickering over who was going to sit on the right hand and who was going to sit on the left. So from the very beginning of the Christian church, there has been the ideal of unity combined with the reality of division. Well, what does unity mean? Not everybody can agree on that. If we're unified, does that mean we're uniform? Does everybody belong to the same denomination? Does everybody conduct their services just alike? Does everybody follow the same order of worship and have the same governmental structure? Well, we know that's not true now. Will that ever be true? Is that even desirable that it be true? Some of us like variety in religion. and we enjoy a change of pace once in a while, knowing it's the same Spirit of Almighty God active in different channels. But in order to be unified, one really does not have to be uniform. And the decisive advance in Catholic Protestant relations came on this day, January the 25th, 1959, 62 years ago today. It came after Pope John the 23rd announced he was convening the Second Vatican Council. He was a remarkable man. Cardinal Angelo Roncalli was his real name. And he was elected Pope in 1958, following the death of Pope Pius XII. And John was already in his 70s. So the general attitude of most everybody was, well, he ain't going to do much. At that age, he's probably not going to make any major changes. He'll just serve a few years and be off the scene, and we'll get somebody else in there. Nothing could have been further from the truth. There's no man more responsible for bringing the Catholic Church into the modern world than Pope John the 23rd. What he did was actually revolutionary. It was on January 25th, 1959, that he announced the calling of an ecumenical council, the first one since Vatican I, which was 1869 and 70. And the council took place between 1962 and 65. And while preparing for the council, John set the Secretariat for Promoting Christian Unity with Augustine Cardinal B as its president. And one of the Secretariat's first actions was to send 5 observers to the Third Assembly of the World Council of Churches at New Delhi in 1961. The Protestant, Anglican, and Orthodox communions were then invited to send delegate observers to Vatican II. The number of these representatives increased during each year of the council. They were given the full agenda, interpretations of the official Latin, and opportunities to meet with the Vatican officials. Cardinal B affirmed in greeting them that the immeasurable grace of baptism established bonds between all Christians that were stronger than their divisions. And one cannot write the history of the 20th century without making mention of Vatican II because it was such a phenomenal event. John the 23rd passed away on June the 3rd of 1963. On June 22nd, they elected Pope Paul VI, and he served until 1978. But even though Pope Paul was somewhat more conservative, he still followed through on many of the measures that were made by John. And one of the Protestant observers was a Southern Baptist theologian, and Southern Baptists are not known for being very ecumenical. But Dr. James Leo Garrett was at the time um, a professor at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. He sat in on some of the proceedings of the Second Vatican Council. When he got his PhD from Harvard Divinity School, his dissertation was on Protestant writings on Roman Catholicism between Vatican I and Vatican II. Dr. Garrett was one of my mentors. He directed my master's thesis at Baylor during the 70s. He passed away in February of last year, and I was honored to be a pallbearer at his funeral. Next month, I will mark the first anniversary of his death with a video tribute to him, God willing. But it was in his uh, class in ecumenics at Baylor in the fall of 1973 that I first learned about Vatican II. And we, several books we studied, including Church Cooperation and Unity in America, 1900 to 1970, by Samuel McCrae uh, Cabot. And I've been very, very interested in ecumenism ever since then. But this particular event, I've never actually celebrated it before. January 18th to January 25th. And for the year 2021, the community of Grandchamp in Switzerland chose the theme, Abide in my love and you shall bear much fruit, from John 15:5 through 9. It expresses their community's vocation to prayer, reconciliation, and unity in the church and in the human family. And at least once a year, Christians are reminded of Jesus' prayer for his disciples, that they may be one, that the world may believe, from John 17:21. Hearts are touched and Christians come together to pray for their unity. Congregations and parishes all over the world exchange preachers or arrange special ecumenical celebrations and prayer services. The event that touches off this special experience is the week of prayer for Christian unity. And again, people don't have the same understanding of unity. A very prominent ecumenical theologian during the 19th century was an outstanding individual named Philip Schaff. He was a native of Germany who came and taught for many years at Union Theological Seminary in New York. He was a church historian, and he coined the term evangelical Catholicism. You know, the word Catholic means universal, but the idea that the Pope is supposed to be above all and that there's that type of attitude that's held by many, he felt like that was not going to be the way to unity. And what he called evangelical Catholicism is what we call we call ecumenism today. And when you enter dialogue, you recognize your position has its strong points and its weak points, the other person's position likewise. And if You enter into dialogue with the intended purpose that at the end of the session, the other person is going to agree with you 100%. They're going to completely change and accept your point of view, convert to your position. It's not going to work. You give a little, you take a little. But you can be enriched as this goes on, as Christians get together to dialogue. Same thing applies when Christians engage in dialogue with Jews, or with Muslims, or with Hindus, or with Buddhists. The Second Vatican Council, by the way, their document on the relation of the Church to non Christian religions, had some positive things to say about the Hindus, the Buddhists, and the Muslims. And it also, the biggest section of that particular document had to do with the Jews. And they put it on record that the Jews could not be held collectively responsible for the death of Jesus. Much anti Semitism throughout history has been based on the claim that Jews were God killers and Christ crucifiers, which is very unfortunate. And by the way, I noticed an interesting item the other day that the two newly elected U.S. senators from Georgia is an African American pastor, Raphael Warnock, and a Jewish man by the name of John Ossoff. And Reverend Warnock has said he feels like two of their predecessors are looking down, smiling, and pulling for them. One is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the other is Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. They were close friends. They met for the first time in January of 1963 at a conference on religion and race in Chicago. And then in 1965, uh, Rabbi Heschel, who was professor at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York City, traveled to Selma, Alabama to take part in the Selma Montgomery March. He later wrote that when I marched with Martin Luther King at Selma, Alabama, I felt my legs were praying. In April of 1968, Dr. King was scheduled to attend a Passover Seder at the home of Dr. Heschel in New York. Sadly, his assassination prevented that. So we see that also the theme for this year, Abide in My Love and You Shall Bear Much Fruit. This allowed the community of Grandshop, the 50 sisters from diverse confessions and countries, to share the wisdom of their contemplative life, abiding in the love of God. It's not easy to always remain in Christ, to abide in love, said Sister Anne Emmanuel Guy. Daily community life is where I can verify where I stand with my love of others and of God. For how can I say that I love God if I do not love my sister, my brother, living alongside me? And Reverend Dr. Oder Pedroso Metius, interim WCC Deputy General Secretary, uh, said that prayer often involves a kind of self isolation, focusing our minds and hearts on the love of Christ. But when we pray for unity, we enter into closer communion with our brothers and sisters in Christ. And coming together, that we have faith in Jesus Christ, that's more significant than our doctrinal differences. What unites us is more significant than what divides us. Like with anything else, there's times you have to agree to disagree. But famous story of John Wesley, the father of Methodism, talking with a theologian who had different doctrinal views than his. He said, if your heart is with my heart, then give me your hand. Um, the It was also during the time of Vatican II that was on January the 6th, 1964, that Pope Paul the Sixth held a meeting at the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem with Athenagoras, the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople. The Catholic and Orthodox churches have been divided by the Great Schism of 1054, in which a mutual excommunication took place. Then, on December 7th, 1965, almost 2 years later, the Pope was at the Vatican in St. Peter's Basilica. The Patriarch in his cathedral in Istanbul. They mutually lifted the excommunication that went back centuries. Catholics and Orthodox still maintain dialogue. Differences remain. Sometimes ecumenical services are Eucharistic, sometimes they're not. And churches that believe very strongly in a closed communion are not likely to hold an ecumenical Eucharist. Many of us who believe very strongly in an open communion uh, are very comfortable with that type of thing. I have many Catholic friends. I've been to Mass many times over the years. But I'm sorry. This bit about if you're not Catholic, we can't serve you communion, but come forward, we'll give you a blessing. I don't like that. I don't like second-rate treatment of any kind. Here's your consolation prize. We'll give you a blessing. Well, if somebody else likes it, that's fine. I'm a pastor and have been for many years. And I believe very strongly in the authority of the pastor in the local church. And if I go to another pastor's church, I'm not going to do anything to try to undermine his authority. I'll submit to whatever his rules are while I'm there. If he or she comes to my church, I expect him to do the same thing for me. But I look forward to a day in which those denominational differences are not as significant. As it's been said, the same way as with racial integration. Dr. King complained about the 11 o'clock hour on Sunday is the most segregated hour of the week. And in 1974, African American pastor in Waco, the late Reverend Adolph Wagner, very dear friend of mine, he said something to me. He said, Bob, I look forward to a day in which you go through a town right after morning worship on Sunday. You come to one church, people of all nationalities are coming out. Maybe a white pastor. Come over here, people of all nationalities coming out. Maybe a black pastor. Come over here, people of all nationalities coming out. Maybe a Mexican pastor. Unfortunately, this is 2021. It's been almost 50 years. It still hadn't happened. Have we made any progress? Yes. But often you take a step forward and you end up taking two steps backwards, both in seeking to understand the issue of racial unity and also overcoming racial barriers, cultural barriers, and denominational differences. And that's what Christian unity is all about. So let's continue to pray for Christian unity. This is the last day of the week of prayer for Christian unity. It's a very significant event, and hope I've given you some food for thought about the need for Christians to come together in the name of Jesus Christ. Have a good evening.